I handle a lot of grain. I've been in the petroleum side of it and also on the bulk side and some container. But when I started sailing, I did a lot of surplus grain. Did PL 480 for World Food Program, USDA, and went to some very interesting places in the world. I wouldn't exactly say the tourist locations of the world, but brought food to third world countries, India, Bangladesh, Djibouti. It was very rewarding. So I saw the other side of that, and it was pretty interesting. So I do have a strong connection here, and also on the domestic side, moving a lot of grain on inland river barges and so forth. So hopefully I got this. Let me start this off. Let me talk a little bit globally. Global maritime trade to double by the year 2030. Three key drivers: global population growth and global GDP growth. Both of those influenced by Asia, strongly influenced by Asia, and then about a 40% growth on energy demand. This will double seaborne trade, and then we're looking at trade to grow from 10 billion to 20 billion tons by 2030. This is significant, but also an opportunity. How does this impact the container market? There's been steady growth for the container market, but from 1990 to 2008, you're looking at about a 10% compounded annual growth rate. Other than the recession, if you focus on 2015 to 2025, in the container market world, we're looking at significant growth, another opportunity. Historical trade patterns. Pre-Panama Canal, Gulf Coast really represented 6.4% of containers moved. Not a big player, just a niche move. And that's basically because small container vessels and the West Coast was really the dominant player. The footprint of the Midwest represents 40% of land mass, 15% of GDP, 92% of agricultural exports, 60% of grain exports, and approximately 200 million metric tons of exports. The Midwest is a big player, significant player. Is there an opportunity to optimize a new transportation logistics system? And the answer is yes. Again, most of the opportunities and most of the cargo went out to the West Coast. What's the historical or recent trade pattern shifts? Oops. Wow, this thing really jumped. So I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one that had a problem with this, huh? Okay, ocean carriers are consolidating. They're creating alliances. Less vessels, but much bigger vessels. So what they're doing is they're pooling their assets and they're pooling their slots on their assets. Large scales of economy, full utilization, the Southwest model, fill those seats up. Existing Gulf Coast ports have inherent inefficiencies. They weren't built for the big vessels. They have limited capability for expansion, and they're growing dwell times and intermodal delays. And the dwell times are basically sitting on the dock and non-movement of cargo. And the intermodal is when there's breakdowns or the train's not moving or the truck's not moving. That combined effect is a significant delay. The larger vessels are creating congestion out in the West Coast. These larger vessels are taking longer to load and offload. That compounds impacts the Midwest. So that creates delays and added costs to the Midwest. So manufacturers are starting to move out to the Midwest and looking at creating consolidation and deconsolidation locations. That's good news and creates opportunities. Post-Panama Canal, Suez Canal expansions. Pre-expansion for the Panama Canal, the largest ship that go through was about 5,000 TEU. After the Panama Canal expansion, it went up to 14,800. As of June of this year, they widened the beam restriction from 49 to 51.25 feet, up to 18,000 TEU vessels now. That's very significant. It depends on the design criteria. So think about the size of the vessel can call now into the port of into the southern region, into the Gulf, and can come into the port of Plaquemines, which is the port that we're looking at building. Very significant large scales of economy, from 5,000 to 18,000. Very significant difference. Where can these vessels go? And it's very constrained. You can't go anywhere else in the Gulf. There's additional sailing time to go through the Panama Canal, but that's been offset relatively offset with the West Coast delays. The market share has grown from 9.5% to 11.9%. Not a whole lot of change. There's been just optimization, and it goes to support the West Coast is totally congested. Imagine if there's a new state-of-the-art container terminal, what the opportunity for market share can be. I skipped over the the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal has now 2 channels. So they went from 23 vessels a day to 97 vessels a day. So there's 2 avenues to get to the Gulf now, Panama and Suez Canal. So significant